All right, we are recording, my friend. Who do you have there with you?
This is the chairman of the board of claim directors at, well, he's the co-chair. Fritz, come
Co-chair.
here. Yeah, the co-chair of the board of ClaimDOC is Fritz. Fritz is from California, your neck of the woods.
Wow.
Sebastopol. He's a giant schnauzer.
We call it Sebastopol out here.
You do?
Yeah.
Sebastopol. There's things in Iowa. Iowa, we've got a town called Madrid. Well, it's spelled Madrid, but we call it Madrid. There's another Iowa town spelled like Tripoli, but we pronounce it Tripola. You know, so
You guys
there's
are
a
very
Sebastopol.
that's
There's a Sebastopol,
Sebastopol. Sebastopol.
Russia, I think. Sebastopol. Okay, fine. Sebastopol in Californian speak. But yeah, Sylvia Hammerstrom is probably the global expert on giant schnauzers, and so I got Fritz from her kennel is called Skansen Kennel. It's in Sebastopol up in
Sebastopol.
Northern California. There,
So
yeah,
you stand about 6 foot 13 tall, as I recall, something like that.
yeah, 6'5".
6'5". That dog
Yeah.
stands about half of that anyway.
Oh,
How
yeah,
big is
he's
that
big.
dog?
He's a big dude. He's about 100 pounds. Fritz, come here. He's 100 pounds, but he's a big fella. You know, he's a good sized kid, and he's
Wow.
just they're super smart. I mean, not to sidetrack our
Oh no, dude.
podcast.
My podcast is the least formal one that you'll find.
Okay,
It's the opposite of your guys's, which is highly produced and clipped and cut, and
yeah, uh,
mine's a disaster.
he's the best. I have run out of things to teach this guy, so
What
he's
now
the
he
best.
this is he a hunter as well?
I've taught him to. Their noses, they do Schutzhund, working dog stuff, police dog stuff, competitions and things. Their noses are phenomenal. So the nose portion, the scent work, they do a phenomenal job in that kind of stuff. But their reason why we don't use them in America is their bite right out of the box. Like an adult giant schnauzer's bites 550 psi, so that will shatter a man's femur.
Wow.
That's lawsuits. Therefore, police departments use German shepherds, and Malinois and stuff that
Wow.
won't
So
rip your leg off. But I've taught him when he was a puppy, just with having a very soft mouth. So anyway, I got him on birds when he was 4 months old, doing just seeing if he could do it. He was phenomenal from the get go, right out from the get go.
what about
Which
birds? What
we
about
just
what about like carrier
blood
reps or
trail. Oh,
monopolistic hospital chains? Does he hunt those
if we
too?
if we just slice them just right at the base of the hamstring, they'll never come through in their golf shot. They'll be pushing everything off to the left, but he would be able to blood trail them to their car for sure. Yeah. So wounded deer, you just go get Fritz. You don't have to worry about losing him. He blood trails. He's a stud. But then I was like, well, what else can he do? He can do pretty much everything. So we have a two-wheel cart. I don't know if you've seen this, but for Christmas, we always give Christmas gifts to the employees and stuff. And Fritz pulls the sleigh. He pulls a two-wheel cart. And so my niece and her daughters love to ride in the cart, and Fritz will pull them around the neighborhood. He'll pull 180, 200 pounds, 3 miles with no sweat. He's a tank, right? But I
Wow.
really think he wants to learn how to drive, which would be very convenient after dinners sometimes, to have him be able to drive and just sleep in the back seat until you get home. But they're wicked smart. But you do kind of have to lord over them a bit like a prison guard, because especially when they're little, when they're little, they perceive everything to be a threat. So you got to kind of work with them through that. Like, no, 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 you don't bite everybody. You just bite the people that make me nervous.
And
So
how many years young is Fritz?
Fritz is 5.
He's
He's
five,
5.
so
So
you've
yeah,
still got plenty of good
he's
years with Fritz.
yes, he's got 7 to 10 years left. So they usually last between 12 to 15 years. So that was we burned through 4 boxers in 20 years, and it was like just it's a heartbreak breed. They're great dogs, but God, they die way too young. And so I was like, let's find something that's a little bit more longevity. And so we're looking at standard poodles. We're looking at Bouvier de Flanders. We're looking at some other breeds, that are hypoallergenic. Because I just didn't, want a shedding dog. So
Yeah.
Sean
Yeah.
him. He's hypoallergenic, so we can bring him to the office. We have people that have dander issues, and they just love up on Fritz all the time, and it doesn't affect them at all, that
Ah,
kind of thing. So he's kind of the office mascot, so to speak, But it's really funny to watch him delivering the Christmas gifts, pulling the sleigh.
that's
It's
awesome.
just it's just he's
You
just
got
the
to get
best.
a red nose on him when he does that.
I don't know. You know what? He'd probably wear one if I put some if I gave him to him some sardines. You can teach him to do about anything with sardines as rewards. The dog just goes bananas for raw fish, for sardines or cheese whiz. So those are two things.
That's funny.
Getting
I got a buddy who just got his first dog, and so like when you have your first kid or your first dog, you go overboard
Yeah,
with everything. So he's literally this dog's now like 2 years old, and he's feeding the dog hamburger, ground turkey, sweet potatoes,
yeah.
rice, and sardines. He doesn't give the dog food. He feeds him human food. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So he gave him so many sardines, the dog won't eat a sardine anymore.
Oh wow,
He overdid it.
interesting. Overdid it. Well, Fritz, when most of the time when you get a dog from a kennel, they're like, "Here, come, give me the money and buy." The Skansen Kennel in Sebastopol, California, uh, owned and operated by Sylvia Hammerstrom. You get a binder this thick. You get a binder this thick of how to treat the dog, cut his hair, feed him. And so I'm like, we've followed their feeding schedule regimen. They feed raw, but with like enzymes to help them to digest the raw meat, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I do the same thing with him. I don't know. It's just, but his
So
craps are
does he
tiny.
not eat kibble? Does he never eat kibble?
No, no.
Wow.
Yeah. So
My
he
dog
eats,
does
he
not
eats,
have it so good. I'll tell you that right
he eats
now.
2.5 pounds of raw meat and organs every day.
Oh, you
and then he has a fasting day during the week. So we do intermittent fasting.
your dog's gonna be on Joe Rogan next. Like he's
I
gonna do the
know,
whole Rogan
I'm
protocol.
like, it's unhealthy how much I love that dog. It really is. It's terrible. So, and I take him about everywhere I go. So it's like people in my town. We live in a suburb of Des Moines called Johnston, Iowa. And I'll take him to wherever, the post office or gas stations, and people be like, "Oh, Fritz." They don't know my name, but they know his. So my wife calls it the FDF, the Fritz delay factor. So I'll be running to the store for like 40, to get something, and it'll be 45 minutes, and it should have been 10 because people see Fritz and they're like, "Oh, my grandpa had one," or
FDF.
that looks like my miniature Schnauzer. Can I pet him? That kind of stuff. So, and then I guess I'm an ambassador for the breed because they're phenomenal. They're super smart. They're super chill unless you're nervous. If you're nervous, then they're nervous. That's what I've heard from some other people that I know that have them. And they're like, if you're high strung, they're high strung. So they kind of match your vibe.
I think all
But
dogs
yeah,
do that, man. I've had
yeah,
labs all my life, and they're the same way. You know.
yeah, yeah. So if you're high strung,
Yeah.
would maybe you need to pet the dog a little bit more and eat some
People
gummies and chill out.
people accuse me of being a little high strung now. You ought to have known me 20
What?
years
No
ago.
way. And I bet as a child in elementary school, you were not a problem at all.
Oh man, a real problem. A real problem.
Craig, but Mr. and Mrs. Gottwalls, the boy is brilliant, but we cannot get him to sit in his chair.
Yeah. He's climbed every tree on the property, fallen out of some of them, and yeah, we can't keep him on the ground. So I should probably introduce you. Thank you for being on this episode of Galt's Gulch, a podcast we do, 3 times a year, whether we need one or not. And I'm with Ben Krambeck. And Ben, you are CEO, founder, and godfather of ClaimDOC. Is that right?
That's correct. That is correct. In that order.
So
Yeah.
how did ClaimDOC come to be, Ben? How did a 6'13" gentleman like yourself, a Seth Rogen lookalike,
Yeah.
end up founding ClaimDOC?
Well,
Give me the
it's a
laugh. Hold
very
on, give me the laugh. You got to give me the Rogan laugh.
yeah. it's it's a long story, but I'll give the condensed version. But ultimately, so I started in the business as a group sales rep for Sun Life Financial, in our Des Moines, Iowa, the Sun Life Financial's Des Moines, Iowa
What era
office.
was that? What year was that?
04 to 06. Okay. I loved that job. I loved Sun Life. I love, it was so cool. Before that, I was still trying to entertain the dream of being a college football coach. And so I was coaching, and I was staying in full commission sales, anything I could sell, like paper products, or just be like a manufacturer's rep or anything, so that if I could sell, then I could take, if I was full commission, I could take the fall off pretty much, and just work half days. So then I could coach in the afternoons and do all that. So I also am, by nature, I'm an introvert, except with people that I know. Right. So I was terrible at recruiting at that time. I was, just out of college, and I was like, didn't want to talk to people, really that much. And I really felt like I need to force myself to get into sales in order to learn how to talk to people out of thin air, just generate a conversation and that kind of thing. Because it's a skill. Anything in life is a skill, and you can learn how to do things. It's just whether or not it takes energy from you or it gives you energy. And so interacting with people for introverts is draining.
Yeah,
right.
Amen,
And
brother.
for
You and I've
extroverts,
had this talk before. I'm the same way. People think I'm an extrovert. I'm not.
no,
A day with
you do it.
people, I gotta sleep for a day to recover.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you're on, it's draining. But anyway, so I got into I basically put the dream to bed, because I couldn't find a GA, in a decent sized program, because they only have two. Back in the 80s and stuff like that, they would have like 6 graduate assistants at universities, right? Then that NCAA cut that down to only 2. So it's pretty tough. If you aren't in that program as a player, it's tough to get one of those GA spots. But anyway, so by that time I kind of put the dream to bed. So I was like, all right, I got to find something I can maybe fall in love with as much as I love football. And just looking around, reading books, and I just kept seeing, the best things are insurance and real estate for creating wealth, right? So I was like, all right. So anyway, looked at a bunch of different things, but I was just looking through the Des Moines Register, and there was an ad for a group sales rep as a wholesaler. And I was like, wholesaling? Benefits wholesaling? That sounds kind of interesting, And so I went and learned about the job, and ended up getting it, and all that kind of stuff. And absolutely loved it. Loved working with people that are salespeople. And I love the pace. So when you're retail sales, when I was in retail sales, I had a max capacity of 30 different deals that you could be tracking, 30 different sales at a time that you could be tracking and trying to get in on, and this, that, and the other thing. Wholesaling,
that's a lot.
Oh man, it's action all the time. You're losing a lot. You're losing a lot more than maybe I did on the retail side, but of just general sales.
Well, you're talking retail carrier though, right?
No, I'm talking about just retail selling anything. Copiers. I sold copiers for a while. Yeah. Just anything. I mean, retail, you could have like 20 to 30 deals, and after that, it's pretty tough.
I'm with you on that.
So I'd be at capacity, right? But in wholesaling, man, you can have hundreds that you're touching, and talk what's going on here, what do we need, and working through the sales process. And I just freaking love that. I love it. So I found, and then also just stop loss, medical reinsurance. I love it. I loved it instantly loved it. When it explained to me what it was, I was like, oh my God, I love that idea. That's really cool. Employers are grabbing hold of their own medical claims, their own program, and then they've got reinsurance, for specific, and then for the aggregate, like that. All of it made sense to me, like quickly, and I was like, man, this is rad. I dig it. So I started doing that, and then got hired by one of my top brokerage firms that I was working with, called True North Companies, which is a top 100 brokerage firm, in 06. And what we were doing there is we had a Ron Furman, who's a Gallagher broker now. He was a partner at True North at the time. We had a problem with a client, and I won't name the client because I don't have permission to, but it was a large trucking company, and it had like 1,500 W-2s. Well, I underwrote it. Was did the field underwriting and then submitted it to my internal underwriter at Sun Life, we thought that it was all W-2s. They had been illegally covering their 1099 owner operators for years, long time.
Oops.
Yeah. So broker Ron gets hired as a BOR. He also didn't know that they were doing this illegally, and I had got the case, and that was like it was a 1-1 case, and so I was already moved over to True North by the time this kind of unwound. But we think the broker that got fired tipped off the DOL, because they got a DOL audit inside of 4 or 5 months after moving over to Ron's block. And so anyway, it like got really noisy really quick. So they ended up getting fined like $60,000 a day until they got it fixed, and it was a ton of money in back taxes and stuff like that. So there was a mass. So anyway, long story short, we'll just dump the W-2 or dump the 1099s off the plan. They're like, no, we'll lose them to one of our competitors.
Froze on me for a moment there.
So
we're good now. Yeah. So we're good now.
Oh, okay. So all right. So Ron said, let's just dump the 1099s off the plan. They're like, well, one, we'd only have 500 people on our health plan, but two, we'll lose all those drivers if we're not offering benefits. So we need to offer benefits, but not have an employer-employee relationship. Go. All right. So long story short, whiteboard meetings. I mean, our whiteboards looked like spaghetti, plates of spaghetti, man. It was just everything drawn everywhere, But ultimately what we did was we created a captive insurance company, and founded Guaranteed Trust Life, which is a B+ rated carrier out of Chicago. We're willing to front the policy and then issue individual certificates to the 1,000 drivers. And then we wrote reinsurance over the captive, and then wrote stop loss over the W-2s. Wow. Right. Yeah. And then use a seasoned association for the eligibility, basically. So if they stopped driving for this carrier, they couldn't keep the coverage. The carrier would stop paying their association dues, which would then terminate their coverage, and blah blah blah. So had a big law firm that they use, that a lot of trucking companies use, look at it, because the state where they were cited, it's a non-MIWA state, so that's why they got in trouble in the beginning. They were MIWA in a state that doesn't allow MIWA. So we fixed that using a captive.
Is Iowa a MIWA state?
No, I don't believe so.
I don't think so. Okay.
So, but it was one of those things where it was like, what else could we use a captive for on a group stop loss basis? Because it makes a lot of sense from the standpoint that there's not a long tail like we're comp captives, and transportation liability captives and stuff like that, where the runout can be 7-8 years, and the collateral is huge, and this, that, and the other thing. So we're looking at it going, man, we could set this up to where it's a very low, collateral, low opportunity, low barrier to get involved, and then also give back big dividend checks. So we structured it that way. So anyway, started doing captives in 06, and then 2009, me and another one of our business partners at the time went full time with BCR, Benefit Captive Re. I still own Benefit Captive Re, BCR, but I just don't really do anything with it, because the next big problem that we came up with a creative solution to solve was because of captive, right? So that's the reason why I lead up to that. So we grew, myself and my former business partner grew our BCR, captive program management company, up to, I believe, 17 different programs. Wow. And we were working with TPAs and brokerage firms and building their own captive. And then, we would manage the captive for a very low fee, and then, set it all up, and they'd be able to have their own market. This is before the time that large aggregating specific deductibles were available, quota share arrangements were available, no lasering, all these creative things that the market kind of adjusted to. That wasn't all that all that readily available. Like people didn't want to do ag specs that were really, really large, today they will, because of the competitive pressure created by all these alternative risk transfer vehicles that are out there now, all these captives and stuff. But in 2009, there just wasn't that many opportunity or options out there. So anyway, so we started doing that. We grew really a business up to about 17 different captive programs. And in 2012, we had the year of the bloodbath. So Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, whatever you want to call it, went into effect March of 2010. And I read everything. I read that entire 3,500 pages. You remember that? We got to read it so we know what's in it. I read it
too. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is bad. I was like, this is going to be bad. Hospital claims are going to go through the roof. One of the things, I'm not bashing, I'm just saying, one of the things I found to be very interesting was Max Baucus and Jared Polis. Okay, their rules in the Affordable Care Act bill. Max Baucus said it was a train wreck, but did attach his name to it. What I've heard is that he leveraged he wasn't going to run for re-election. He's a Montana senator, I think.
Montana, yeah. He was Montana, yeah.
He wasn't going to run for re-election, but what did he get after the bill passed? Ambassadorship to China. Not a bad gig, no. I wouldn't think, at that time. So anyway, and then also Jared Polis, supposedly in the book, it's outlined in the book, Throw Them All Out. If you've ever read that.
I haven't.
Okay. This part is outlined in the book. His family made investments in foreign or companies that are like sourcing of top 100 companies surgeries to other countries like Costa Rica, Belgium, Philippines, so on and so forth. The only way for their multi-million-dollar bet, which was, I think it was, if I remember right from the book, 16, there was a range of, they have to disclose those ranges before all the politicians started using trusts to do their insider trading. They would actually disclose, we're investing $16 million to $25 million in a business, right?
Yeah.
So that happened. And so, but the only way for that multi-million-dollar family bet to pay off is if the hospital's pricing goes through the roof. The hospital prices go through the roof. Therefore, that would motivate companies, multinationals, to source their surgeries elsewhere. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Then also the lobby. This isn't in the book, but there's someone else that I know that told me, they're like, yeah, Affleck wrote the thing. Affleck pretty much authored.
I've heard that too. That is wild to me.
Right. Well, but then you look at the math and you go, what was their residual premiums in 2009? It was like $9 billion, right? Now their residual billions in premiums are like 65, 70 billion with no MLR, right? So no minimum loss ratio.
Yeah. So that's right. You're right. That's a good point.
Yeah. And their loss ratios are like 23, 24%.
And increasing deductibles so that you're going to sell more of your hospital indemnity and more of your gap insurance and all that. And so,
raising the gap, they're creating the gap, right? By allowing hospital claims to go through the roof, premium volume to go through the roof, raises deductibles. That creates more space for them to sell their product. Yeah. It's brilliant. I'm not bashing them. I mean, good on you, mate. That's pretty dang brilliant. So if your responsibility is to your shareholders and not to the general public, you're doing your job, and you're a smart person if you're creating that type of win for your company. So I'm not bashing. I'm a capitalist at heart, right? But it does beg the question, when does this break, right? So anyway, so going back to 2010, and so understanding that and learning, it's all hindsight that we've learned all that stuff. But at the time, I was like, this seems like it's going to be really bad, but it didn't in 2010. It didn't in 11. It's like there was a period of time where everybody was like, well, is this going to stick because of the non-severability clause that was in it, So if anything in the bill gets cut down, the whole thing goes away. So it's almost like nobody really wanted to invest the time to start making it work for them as best as they could from a hospital and insurance, company standpoint, large insurance company standpoint. So for a while, but then that expired and they were like, go, go, go. Because in the first, I'll just talk about the first one program that really lit the fire for me to start ClaimDOC is we had one captive program that had 26 groups in it, over 6 million in annualized premium, over 10,000 belly buttons, right? I mean, very predictable pool. And in the first 2 months of the year in 2012, we had 42 claims post PPO discount that were over $500,000. And of those 42 claims, 19 of them were over $1 million. And Craig, I'd never seen $1 million claimant in my career to that point.
Yeah.
You know, 980, I think, was the closest I ever saw. And that was like Preemie Twins. But that was only one time. Then to see it 19 in literally 6 weeks is like, whoa, okay, it's hit. You know, that's when I was like, oh no, it's here, you know. And so we were scrambling because we were like, that's the last thing you want to do as a program manager is have a reinsurance hit or a collateral call, because all your clients are like, I thought you guys were I thought this was gonna be better, man, you know. And you're like, but we forgot about Halloween being the Affordable Care Act and then that kicking in. But anyway, so we stopped selling into that because we were like, okay, this segregated cell is probably dead. So let's isolate it. So we quit selling into it. And our whole job for the rest of the year was to just mitigate the loss as best as we could. Right. And so the first claim that came through that was like a shocker was $1.1 million bill charge, discounted only to about $890. And it was in your neck of the woods. In fact, it was in your town, in Sac, right? It's from one of our clients that we still have. So we still have this client, and they're in Central Valley, California. Thin margins business, you know, good, extremely good operators, you know, smart, really, really smart guys that run the company, have done really well growing it, even in a challenged environment. But the claimant it was a car accident. And so it was a trauma claim, which triggered no of the outlier provisions.
Ben, that discount is so nominal. Was it one of the national carriers, or were you using some kind of a local network at that point?
No, we were renting a national network for $1,850 PEPM.
Wow, and you still got a discount that was only 20%,
11-ish, 11. Yeah, right. Yeah. So it was like we're like, what is going on? So I called the rep that sales rep we were working with on the network selection. And I said, hey man, you know, you gave us all this documentation that said that the average discount is 45%. I'm a math guy, so I can get there, you know. I mean, 2 + 2 = whatever you want it to be. That's the type of math I like to do, you know. But what are we dealing with here? Are you doing conjoined twin separations for 99.9999% off in order to come to your 45% average discount? Walk me through the math, right? And so there's like, well, it was an outlier. I'm like, okay, send me the list of the outlier. Oh, wow. The outliers, here we go. Preemie babies, high-risk pregnancies, burns over 30% of the body, cancer claims, cancers, okay? Trauma claims, car accidents. I'm like, or motorcycle, any type of vehicle accident. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, everything that's really expensive, you're getting 11 to 15% off. And then everybody else is getting 40, 50. But then how do you get to 45? I still don't know how they got to 45%. That's
because they did it because it wasn't a weighted average. They just took all the numbers. They said we got 65 off here, 65 off here, 65 off here, and those were $700 procedures. And then they just averaged the percentage off. They didn't average the volume. That's how they freaking do it.
Right. And so anyway, so I was just like, okay, well, I need itemization, you know. And they're like, no, you can't. There's no audit provisions in the PPO.
Yeah, you signed a contract that doesn't allow it.
Yeah. I said, I didn't. I'm with the captive. I'm not a party to the TPA network contract, you know, and the group, and I'm not a party to that. If you want to get paid, I want a UB04. We went round and round on that for 3 months, 2 or 3 months before we finally got itemization. And here's what we had: $110,000 operation room setup charge. Not $83,250.46. You know, $110,000 operation room setup charge. Fuel surcharge for the life flight, $56,000 even. Not for the use of the equipment, that was still on there. There's other stuff, but just the line item fuel surcharge, 56 grand.
Surcharge. You could
Yeah.
fly, you could take President Trump's plane to Europe and back and not run up that bill.
Mm-hmm. But they flew from, just outside of Lodi to Sac. And what's that, 3 gallons of gas?
Yeah, that's about 25 miles. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I was 56 grand, $11,000 per titanium screw that they put into the patient. Nurse opened the bag, dropped the bag on the floor. And the MSRP for that is $180 from the manufacturer in Chicago, which means the hospital is probably buying it for $90,
Yeah.
$800 even, but $11,000 per screw. So this is hyper billing, in the ER and the ICU. And I was just like, what? No, so if you take all of the garbage out of it, Medicare, based on the codes, Medicare would have paid $160. So that's where the light bulb went off for me, where I was like, wait a second, $160 Medicare, $980 because you're part of an employer-sponsored benefit plan. This is a tax on employers.
Yeah.
This is a tax on employers that we didn't vote for. What happened? What started the Boston Tea Party? What started the Revolutionary War? Taxation without representation. I mean, I was like, this is a battle cry. So I've learned a lot since then. I've smoothed out my thinking since then, but I was very ideologically thinking at that point in time, this is unfair to employers.
Right.
So we then said, well, what would Medicare have cost, or not Medicare? What would work comp have cost? And so the highest of 3 different work comp scenarios we ran through was $225,000. So we sent a letter, a notification of adverse benefit determination, and a check for a final payment to the facility of $225,000. They could have appealed for more money. They didn't. The statute of limitations on ERISA is 180 days. That expired. They did finally come back to us, and we, after rounds and rounds of conversations, they decided to take the 225.
Beautiful.
So that was the first one, right?
Yeah.
So
what year was that, roughly?
2012.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So we learned a lot in 2012, a lot. So just through our own captive experience, right? The next one was $860,000 bill charge, discounted to $514,000, which seems like pretty solid discount, right?
Yeah, it's getting better.
Until you realize it's an endoscopic procedure, an outpatient. Just throwing a scope down. Should have been $3,400, discounted to $1,800, but it was right. So we called the member, and the member was more than happy to share with us that the hospital killed her. They killed her. Sure, her potassium levels were way too low. And they put her under anesthesia. And she died. Yeah. So that was, in my opinion, that's a never event. That's a hospital mistake. Why does my client have to pay for a big time mistake from the anesthesiologist?
Yeah.
In that situation. That's not even the hospital's mistake. That's the anesthesia firm that, got contracted to be there that day. That's who screwed up. So anyway, we sent a letter to the facility and said, okay, we want to get you paid. Here's all I need: pre-operation blood work and an itemization. And inside of a week, we got a settlement letter offer for $30,000. So we're just like, 980 down to 225. 514 down to 30 grand. The spec deductible for that client was like 60,000, so it wasn't even a spec hit. So we ended up doing that. Long story short, too late again, sorry. But long story short, we did that another 40 times, and we saved the captive from having that segregated cell did not have a collateral call or a reinsurance hit.
Wow.
We landed when we were done, landed with just a smidge of underwriting gain. So that was the where it was finally galvanized for me, and I was like, this is only going to get worse, and we need somebody to do what we just did. And so kind of did a brief poll of the clientele that we were managing captives for, and said, what do you think? let's rip the PPOs out because there's no audit provisions, and then there's these underlying or these the what are the no audit provisions, and then the outliers, right? So then there's the outlier list. Let's just get rid of that and go direct, so then we can audit the bills and make sure you're not getting ripped off. Just kind of handle everything on an out-of-network basis, unless we can cut a single contract agreement, single case agreement, or a direct contract with the facility on behalf of our clientele that is very transparent and maybe has some caps in it for Medicare caps and so on and so forth. So it's still a good deal. Vast majority of our clientele said, we'll take a wait and see approach, but we did get to start with a few. So there's a few clients that we got to start with. So I named the company, went on LegalZoom.com and filed all the paperwork in January of 2013. And so ClaimDOC LLC was born out of a captive problem, a loss problem. And then it's been, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back for the last 12 years, So, but, we're now, auditing claims. We've audited over 1 million claims. I mean, we're in all 50 states, and I think we've even got some claims from Puerto Rico too. So, I mean, it's we're everywhere now, but it just started from a problem, and then using, your old thinking cap to solve the problem, getting some access to some people who were experts in different pieces of it, was very helpful as well. And so, but then it was just, finding like-minded brokers, finding like-minded clientele that feel like that taxation without representation is wrong. And so that was really, ideologically speaking, 12 years ago, it was very cut and dry. This is what we need to do. This is wrong. Do this and that and the other thing. We've softened quite a bit in the last 12 years. So now we're working with the BUCAs. We're doing dual option alongside Blues and alongside United Healthcare and alongside Cigna. So where you can offer the rank and file, offer everything to everybody, which you can choose if you want a PPO option, or you can choose the ClaimDOC option. But the ClaimDOC option, deductible and out-of-pocket maximum is significantly lower. The money coming out of the employee's check is significantly less. And when we do that and get the differentials right, we're getting 85% of the group. But the execs and people who can afford more exposure, higher deductibles, higher out-of-pocket maximums, and more money coming out of their check, they can purchase the PPO option. So it's true consumerism at this point, and we're just trying to run alongside the powers that be and help as many people as we possibly can, and as opposed to being ideologues and saying, no, this is the right way and the only way.
Right.
It's just it's tough to grow like that.
What's interesting, Ben, is when I explain that to a prospective client or a client, when I run it all out, 9 out of 10 times they opt not to have a carrier. Once I get them that far, usually it's 5 or 6 meetings in, they're excited, they're asking really good questions, and then somebody in the group, whether it's the CFO, CEO of HR, somebody says, well, why would we even offer the carrier at this point? And so, like 9 out of 10 times, they don't want to. I always make it an option. I always say, hey, so let me ask you this. Why? I mean, I have my answers, obviously, but I want to hear from you. Why would an employer keep a BUCA, a national carrier PPO option alongside of ClaimDOC?
Well, one is the TPAs that are owned by those entities are big. They're big. They're robust. Their SOC, their cybersecurity is outstanding. Right. Mm-hmm. So from that standpoint, it's really good, generally, because as you and I both know, there's a lot of TPAs out in this country that I don't even know if there's on ICD-10s yet. They're just not, they have not kept up with compliance and not kept up with security. And it's a problem. It's a big problem. So I think the robustness of the administrators is one major advantage in doing dual option and, as we go up market. But in that security, cybersecurity processing, not NSA, all those different compliance, CAA, NSA stuff, the MRFs and all that stuff that we do now that we didn't have to do 12 years ago. So if I was starting today, I wouldn't start ClaimDOC. There's too much yeah, there's too much compliance oversight stuff. That it's onerous, and so uh, it's kind of like I was in the right place at the right time and got lucky, I guess, to a degree, but that the compliance component is really difficult, and CPAs run their businesses on very compressed margins generally. So you have a high overhead business, a high payroll responsibility, have a payroll capacity, and then everybody's trying to give you to operate off of a $6 admin rate. From a TPA. The TPA business is really hard. It's really hard.
Right. Yeah. No.
And
Yeah.
so to be good at it, you've got to charge enough to be able to have the resources and the all of that to deliver the service in a white glove, or just do a good job, blocking and tackling, answer the phones and paying claims properly. It's tough. It's a tough business to be in. But I would say with regard to that's my main thing is the TPA piece. But there's some regional TPAs that we work with that are really freaking good. And they have access to Cigna, or some of them may even have access to Elevance in the 14 Anthem states. There's rules governing around that and that kind of thing, but almost all of them that we work with have Cigna, or they may have regional networks that they have relationships with, because there's some. MagnaCare is a good one up in the Northeast and New York area. MedCost is a good one in the Carolinas. I mean, those are just MMO in Ohio. There's some really good regional PPOs that just don't get out too far, and they've got TPAs in their markets that have access to them that are really good TPAs. But it's hard to find a really good TPA, frankly.
So let's say you're offering that national PPO alongside of ClaimDOC, and I've got to pay 30% more of an employee contribution for the PPO, and I get a plan that's 10% less on an actuarial value score.
Right.
Who's taking that plan?
The network plan?
Yeah, who's signing up for that one?
Just mostly the execs.
And why? Why are they doing that?
Because they can afford to take the additional exposure and pay the additional amount, because they probably don't want to pay much attention or educate their families on how to operate within the RBP space. Like they just want to do what they've been doing so they can focus on their core job, which is
even though they're the most capable of doing it too. I mean, that's the funny thing.
Well,
they're the ones that are.
Our executive VP, his first year with us 9 years ago, I kept saying, "Why are you you need a primary care doctor." He's the smartest guy in the building, but he would always go to the ER or the urgent care clinic. He'd go to urgent care whenever he got sick. I was like, "What do you do? What are you doing, man?" He's like, "I don't have time for this stuff." I'm like, "You need to make time and get a primary care doctor and start managing your health." It's not a product we want to use. You know what I mean?
Right.
People spend a ton of time picking a TV, but they spend 7 minutes selecting all of their benefits, including their 401k package. How much are they going to? We don't want to shop for this stuff. I don't say, "Gosh, you know what? I wonder if an HCA hospital or a tenant-based hospital would give me better customer service by taking my gallbladder out. Which one should I go to? Is my gallbladder need to go out? I don't know, but I just want to take it out just to see. Let's experience it. Let's see a customer experience of tenant versus HCAA. We don't do that. It's just you don't want to use healthcare. You don't want to go to the hospital. So it's not exactly a consumer product, in my opinion. It's.
Let me give you my answer, because I think you might be it might be harder for you to say it. I would put that national network in if I had more than 1,000 lives nationally, where I could have a health system that becomes a real problem for me down the road.
That's perfect.
I know I've got a backup plan, but the reality is I can always slap in a Cigna contract late and solve that anyway. But that's basically it. So if I have 400 employees in one region and I know I don't have a hospital system problem, my recommendation is do not add a PPO.
Look, you're the quarterback. I'm just, just playing tight end.
You got to play.
I'm just playing tight end, man.
It's because the reality is the customer service and again, I'm like kind of skipping ahead, but the customer service one gets from ClaimDOC is I call a building in Iowa with 150 people in it, half of which answer phones and help people. They all speak either English or Spanish, or not all speak Spanish, but they speak a language I understand, and they understand my plan. And then if I have to call back tomorrow because something's not right, I get the same person, right? So
Right.
it's like I get this like white glove concierge built-in deal where this organization is built not on an aggressive sales
I guess.
platform. Sorry, Omar. It's built on the service, and that's what makes you so. I mean, Omar is aggressive on sales, but that's not the
Yeah.
focus of ClaimDOC. The focus of ClaimDOC is the service, and like
Yep.
there's I last time I counted, I came up with 9 repricers. There's probably more. I've worked with or been intimately involved with 9 of them at this point, and everybody has kind of their own spin on it. But what you guys do that is so different, and don't take it from me. I was talking to a TPA on Monday, not an executive at a TPA, somebody who's in like an account management executive, somebody who's in the trenches at the TPA, and she just goes, I respect what they do so much. They work so hard to get access and to make people understand how their plan works. I mean, it is truly a differentiator. And I guarantee when you started this in 2012, started doing
Mhm.
this, you didn't think you were going to have to build out an army of customer service people to pave the way.
No,
So
no.
we
I
say pave
thought
the
it
way.
would.
Talk a little bit about what paving the way is and how
Okay.
that
Well,
evolved.
Pave the Way happened out of a panic.
Yeah,
Um,
I bet.
in, in 2015, let me make sure. Let me see if I get the order of sequencing what happened. We were using First Health physician only network quite a bit, early, right? And First Health got bought by Coventry, and nothing changed. And then Aetna bought Coventry, and the very next day they shut down the First Health physician only network. And I was like, oh, that's how they're going to kill us.
Yeah,
They're
hold
going to
on, time
shit.
out,
They're
time
going
out.
to.
I just want to do a quick for just for, if people aren't so with reference-based pricing, we're primarily trying to reduce the facility charges, the hospital charges. We really aren't attacking the doctors at all. So a lot
No,
of times we will use a physician-only network just to so you have a logo on your card just to make that access point easy. But we're still reference-based pricing the facility claims. All right, back to you. Sorry, I just want to. I
right?
don't want to get
Because
too hit for the room.
a health plan doesn't go broke because you're paying your doctor 125% of Medicare.
Right.
That's actually more than what your doctor is generally getting anyway.
Yeah, see my
So they're
Signal post
happy.
on
They're
LinkedIn this week.
typically happy to receive. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
typically happy to receive that. But your hospital, your health plan is going broke at the hospitals and the outpatient facilities and dialysis centers and stuff like that. So yeah, so when Aetna killed the First Health um, physician only network, that triggered a panic in my head, and I was like, oh goodness, okay, if they, meaning the Blues United, Cigna, Humana, don't want reference-based pricing to continue to build momentum, if I'm in their boardroom, I would say buy up all of the regional physician-only networks, buy Prime, buy HealthSmart, and then whack, kill the physician-only network. And so there was a bit of a protect the flank moment where we were like, okay, we got to be able to operate without a network at all. We have to be able to do total network replacement complete without a physician only network with nothing, just bare bones go. You can't do that with not very many people, right?
yeah, you can't
So,
do that with technology alone.
right. So we were like, okay, let's beta test this. And luckily, we've had a lot of clients that when we go to them and say, here's what we're thinking. Would you be okay with us try to do this? And you're the guinea pig. And we've had some really great clients and over the years that are like, yes, we'll do it. Like, awesome. So we start with an existing client that they know, okay, look, if this goes terrible, if we screw it up bad, 4 months in, we'll get a physician only network on and we'll know that we'll have to, go back to the drawing board. But luckily the first times we did it, it was successful. But what we realized was that it's a lot more out calls than in calls. So if Craig's family needs a doctor's visit, and you call in and say, hey, I want to nominate this doctor and I want to go see him within the next couple of weeks or something like that. It takes us, we received one phone call from Craig. It takes us on average 10 outbound calls to get to the right person at that doctor's office or that healthcare facility or that healthcare, provider, to get to the right person, to get not contracted, but get them to be willing to submit the claims to the plan, educate them on our program. Here's what the ID card looks like. Here's what the benefits are. He wants to come on this Thursday, blah, 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 whatever. We set it all up. We paved the way, trademarked, and we've threatened some people who've been trying to steal Pave the Way lately.
Gravel the path.
Pave the way.
We're going to gravel the path. We're going to gravel the path.
Gravel the path, right. So anyway, but pave the way. So we paved the way, made it, it takes us 10 outbound on average, 10 outbound calls for every one that you receive. So we started just slowly doing total network replacement until it got to be about 35% of our book of business. And then we're like, man, it's a heavy lift, as Bruce Hanson, our executive VP, calls it. It's a high calorie burn. So it's more expensive. And that's why I kept thinking that everyone would follow us in that regard. The companies we compete with, I thought they would follow us in that. Bruce was always confident that they won't. And I was like, why? I mean, we're hand to head. When we win, we're keeping 90% of our clientele year over year. Our retention rate is 90% because we take care of the members extremely well. Our mantra 10 years ago was, do you want your mother on this plan? This was when we were small. SEAL Team 6 is what I would always say. I'm like, we're SEAL Team 6. We're not Gas Can Brigade. Gas Can Brigade is later. Right now, we're SEAL Team 6, baby. And that was when all the sandboxes were together. And a startup, generally, you have a crew of people if you can, get them gut hooked on your mission, we're all in. It's fun. We're building something that's unique, but there's different growing pains, and we can talk about that later. But it's like when you start to separate the sandboxes, that's a very tough time for your employees because they're like, whoa. You want me to just focus on Pave the Way and not do balance bill defense and not work on this part of the claims, getting the hospital bills just come in? Well, right. We're big enough now that we just need, you're really good at this. Let's focus, have you focus here. Let's have you guys focus on balance bills. You focus on getting the itemization of the bills, the auditing and the setting up for the nurses. And, you're separating the sandboxes, so to speak, and starting to refine the process into an individual skill set in all aspects of the company. Every time we've separated more and created more refinement, it's tough for people who have been here for a long time to accept that, because they're like, but I to let go and say, I know it's going to be okay if I'm managing all of this, right? So it's building that trust and confidence in their teammates that it's going to be okay. Go ahead and let go. It's hard for all of us to let go, but I was just always, talk when they're struggling with it and be like, look, you need to go home this weekend. You need to watch Finding Nemo. Because what was Dad's problem that Dory fixed? She was like, let go, baby. He's like, how do I know it's going to be okay? We don't let go, and see how it works.
What percentage of your incoming business now goes completely raw dog with no network?
I break it down to like U500. So under 500 companies, it's probably about 40%. Yeah. Because a lot of the brokers are like, again, they're like Nemo's dad. And they're like, let's just put in Prime, or let's just put in HealthSmart, or let's just, so, but it's okay. It's whatever. Look, again, we're just playing tight end. We're blocking on the edge, and then we're running play action, catching the ball and getting first downs. That's our role, right? Our brokers are the quarterbacks. So
over 500, it would be what, 75, 80%?
No. Over 500, we're doing a lot more dual option now with the carriers. Yeah. And so we've got, either HealthSmart, UMR, United Healthcare's TPA, so we've got HealthSmart, or we've got the Blues physician-only network on the Elevance stuff. Yeah. So, or if we're using an independent TPA that's got Cigna, then we're probably using Prime or somebody.
I should say it in reverse. Maybe so as a percentage over 500, how many are going raw dog, no network?
Oh, 15% probably.
Okay.
Yeah, we still have some. We still have some.
I said it in reverse, yeah.
2 and 3,000 life groups that have nothing. You know, and their ID cards. By the way, their ID cards are so clean; it looks so good. That's because you know there's all these points.
Hey,
There's
you
all these
put your
point
logo
solutions.
on an ID card.
Yeah, we do. Always have.
Yeah,
Always have.
and some of your competitors don't. They don't want
Right.
any part of that hospital knowing that RBP is coming.
Right. We always felt since day one that was wrong. It was disingenuous, and I think it's an unfair business practice. So we have always said we need to put our logo on the ID card, explain what we're doing, so then we can start the conversation and do so from a position of respect and credibility, as opposed to if you're trying to break into a bank versus walking in the front door and saying, "Hey, I want a loan." You know, that's two different conversations.
Yeah.
You know, so you have a lot more probability of getting money out of the bank and not going to prison. You know, but yeah. So as the groups get larger, generally speaking, it's the brokers are a little bit even more kind of like, let's just slap this thing out, because we can round out, even if the physician only network isn't that great from an access standpoint. So I'm not going to bash PHCS, but their physician only network, PHCS which is now called Clarative or whatever. Yeah, right. Multi-plans rebranded as Clarative.
Yeah, Clarative.
Their network was like Swiss cheese all over the country. And even though the network is supposed to be updated in real time, there we would find all the time. We would find dead doctors, retired docs, you know, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So the names were not updated. So anyway, we would end up rounding out that for all of our groups that were using that anyway, right? So we still pave the way on probably 20% of all physician access issues when you're using a physician-only network, because they're limited, outdated, you know, that kind of stuff. So pave the way really comes in handy when you're using a physician-only network as well. It's just the volume isn't to the point where it's burying us, you know.
We had a situation, Ben, where we were using a physician only network in a western state. It was Arizona, actually, and it was one of the ancillary, right? It was like allergy tests, and you know, when you broke it down test by test, it was something like 250 different allergy tests.
Mm-hmm.
And when that was priced at that particular physician only network, the bill was $15,000. If we had run reference-based pricing on it, I had y'all RBP it was $300.
Yeah.
So, and it went out. You know, the TPA paid it on the ancillary side of the physician ancillary network. You know, the TPA did the right thing, but then I got involved after the fact, and I said no. Let's get that money back. Let's whatever we got to do. Let's RBP that. And so honestly, this client is involved enough, conscientious enough that once I kind of showed them this is one of the things out there that physician only network, physician and ancillary network can do to you. We ripped it out. We got rid of it. I mean, he was like, fine, get rid of it. I don't want that.
Yeah, that kind of leads me in a direction that I would love to go in the conversation too, referring to these specialty networks and point solutions. Let's call them point solutions, like, oh, for this, or there's bundled this, or there's that, you know, this, that, and the other thing.
100 different things that nobody can keep track of and remember they have baked into your plan. Yeah, right. I know. It drives me nuts.
And so, and unfortunately, we've had situations where somebody's already in they've come through the emergency room. They're in I'll start with like a specialty transplant type scenario, right? So they've already got through they came in through ER, they're already in the ICU, so they're already in. We're going to RBP, we're going to do the ClaimDOC method, 125 of Medicare or 120% of the cost to charge ratio, whichever is greater, 20% profit or 25% above Medicare, whichever is greater, ensuring that they make at least 20% profit on everything that we do. Fair reimbursement. We already got them. But the TPA tried to put this person into a specialty network to get them on the transplant waiting list because they were matched up well for a kidney and blah 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 blah. And I was like, wait a second, whoa, 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 we don't need that. What are you talking about?
You're
We
in.
found out
You're in.
they're in. What are we doing? What are you doing? Oh, guess what? There was a 20% commission for using that. So sometimes we need to be very what's the word? We need to be very vigilant on as someone in your role, need to make sure that we aren't being funneled into things that
throwing in all these point solutions. Yeah. So
right.
I want to
the other part of that is that's got to be on the card. The card gets crazy. Employees don't know when to use it, how to use it, that kind of thing. Even your pre-cert vendors like, wait, what's on this thing? Okay, well, if it's a radiology thing, you don't need that stuff. We're already doing
the problem. So
right, and the thing is, we're going to save a lot of money doing what we're doing. You don't want for the maybe there's a nickel to be saved, maybe there isn't. Maybe it's you lose a dime. I don't know, but to add these point solutions on top of it, you're confusing the member to the point where they might complain like this is so discombobulated and this. Right. It gets so clunky.
Right.
The broker.
He froze on me again. Oh, there you are.
Gets fired. The TPA gets fired, and we get fired.
So clunky. So clunky.
Everybody gets. Yeah, so clunky. It's so clunky that the member experience is inhibited and it's negatively impacted, and we all get fired. And you're like, dude, they were winning. They were winning. They're going to win big time, and you're just trying to squeeze every ounce of blood out of that turnip. Sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze on some of these things.
Not worth the squeeze.
Just be good. Just be good at this and do this. And it's going to impact everybody in a positive way long term.
If you as an employer group and a broker are trying to put in a network, like a customized network, direct contracting solution without RBP, then yes, you're going to probably need all of those little carve-outs to make it work. But once you're doing RBP, you're accessing the saving. You're accessing the maximum savings you're going to get in any reasonable fashion. You don't need all that other stuff complicating the plan. I just, the whole thing drives me nuts because everything you just said is accurate. So I wrote an article a couple years ago now that it was Benefit Pro picked up. I think it was called the 10 Commandments of Reference-Based Pricing. And at this point, if I were to rewrite that article, I would just write the one commandment of reference-based pricing. Because, well, that's being facetious. Because, like, if you're taking a new broker, you got to teach them all the steps. You got to teach them all the objections, how to overcome them all. All these things are challenges. But there's really only one challenge I care about because I know we're going to win every other challenge, and that's access. That's the only thing I care about is access. I care about a health system that says, not taking it, go away. With that said, if we want to put a cash pay point solution in, because the cash pay point solution rounds out a little bit more access for us, great. It's not a savings thing. It's just rounding out some access. But other than that, you're preaching to the choir with that one, Ben.
And just a reminder, our MedCash program, which is all inclusive in our comprehensive program at no additional charge, is available for those situations.
We need it more. We need more. I know y'all are working on it. We need more MedCash.
Right. And that's been something that was on my whiteboard forever. While we were doing Pave the Way in 15 and 16 and developing that, I also had didn't have it named, but I was like some type of flow solution for fronting money for the health plan and collecting it on the back end. So we keep them.
Explain what it is.
And it just, what's that?
Explain what it is for people.
The best way to explain it is probably to give you an example of a story. So Craig needs to have his shoulder surgery, right? And so you do everything. You get the pre-certification, you go to a specialist, orthopedic surgeon says we need, you got a torn labrum, we need to fix that. And so you take work off, you get your PTO approved, use fast the night before, and then you go in Friday morning for your surgery and they say, give me your credit card. We're going to swipe your credit card for your max out of pocket to ensure that we're going to your members' cost share is satisfied. That sucks, because a lot of times when we audit the bill later, your member cost share would be half of that, or if not more, less, even less than that. Now, getting those dollars back from the facility is going to be really difficult, right? So there's two things. First is member stress, because you're like, what the heck? I did everything right and I'm still getting jacked around. You're generally not going to be mad at the outpatient facility or the hospital or whoever, wherever you're getting your surgery. That's who you should be upset with, but you're not, because we're all, it's a very shrouded system and it's difficult to understand.
Yeah.
They're going to be mad at their employer sponsored benefit plan. And so one, member stress. I don't want Craig to have that member stress if we don't have to have it. So a solution to fix that. And then also the financial portion, which is, I'm going to float you the money. You're not going to swipe your credit card at all. ClaimDOC is going to float that money on the cash pay basis to the facility, and then on the back end submit that amount of money to the plan as a claim and have the TPA reimburse us. That is one, you have access guaranteed, because some people swipe my credit card. What if they don't have access on their credit card? What if they don't have enough money, right? I mean, tons of Americans have maxed out credit cards.
Yeah.
So what if you don't have all that money available? So you don't have access to credit. You're done, and they're not going to do the surgery that day. That's stressful. I hate it. So we've been trying to solve for that for a number of years. But that's kind of the process in a general sense. But now it's all been fixed and done, and now we have a process for that. It doesn't cost the client any more money, and there's no additional fees whatsoever. It's just baked into our program and our workflow processes. So, it's just every year we're making things bigger, faster, and stronger, and flow easier, and make the member experience better. And that's, again, because 10 years ago, when we were creating Pave the Way, I was saying to everybody, do you want your mother on this plan? If the answer is I don't know, we're doing something wrong, and let's fix it. What is it? And that letting go thing, I tell everybody that I talk to that are starting a new company, I'm like, as fast as you possibly can, hire some people with talent, and then get out of their way. Listen to them, and then figure it out. But I will also say, if they tell you it's going to take 6 months, it'll take a year. If they tell you it's going to cost $1 million, it's going to cost $2 million. And if they say you need 3 people, you're going to need 6. Just double everything, so then you can manage your own stress level as an entrepreneur and budget accordingly. But hiring like Stephanie Moore, she was Stephanie Paz when she first started, before she got married, and we had sorry, this is just sidebar, but she's been with us 9 years now, right? She's awesome, amazing teammate. But her maiden name was Paz, P-A-Z. And so Stephanie, we had first letter and the last name, then at claim-doc.com as email. And she came to me, and she was, very new and everything. Like, she goes, Ben, would it be okay if we spell my whole name out? And I was like, why? It's just, she goes, well, it says spaz at claim-doc.com. And I was like, oh, it does. Okay, well, you can. All right, we'll fix that. So we gave her own email address, but that's one of the coolest things I think we've seen. We've seen so many of our people, like last year, for example, 93% of all of our elevated hires last year were all from internal. 93%.
Wow.
We are developing people as a member advocate area, and then they elevate themselves through their work ethic, talent, and ability. And so it's funny, because the Pave the Way program was basically developed, it was spearheaded by Stephanie Paz, who now is Stephanie Moore. So she was young and hungry and wanted to fix the problems, because she was also an account manager. Like, so she was our account manager at that time. So she was the one taking the arrows from the brokers and the employer groups. And so she was like, very intuitive, like, if we did this, if we could figure this out, then that would make this run more smoothly, and this and this. And And then we just sat there and listened, and they were like, okay, who do we need to contact to help us with that? And then we would just kind of,
Yeah.
she was quarterbacking that platform. So that's the kind of a cool thing. And I've got so many stories like that.
But
Sam Apple, and just, I mean, all
it's
these
awesome.
young kids who now, they came in, and oh God, our first couple of years of Friday cookouts they were a bit wild. Let's just put it that way, because all these guys were fresh out of high school or college, and it was fun. But we've tamed things down as we've grown, because you kind of have to, but seeing these guys grow and develop themselves into like industry princes and princesses of the industry. I mean, just absolutely amazing professionals. That's just been probably my favorite thing, is watching them develop themselves. And I think it probably goes back to my desire to coach football,
Yeah.
as the coaching aspect of just who I am, and that kind of thing, is helping the people to become the best version of themselves that they're capable of becoming, to steal from Coach Wooden at UCLA, the peace of mind that comes from knowing you become the very best at becoming the very best that you're capable of becoming, that his mantra, the pyramid of success,
What
so
you're doing
getting
is
people to see
what you're
that in
doing
themselves
is
and then believe in themselves is key. Sorry.
what, as I say, what you're doing stands out. I mean, it's you do have a couple people trying to copy you now, and I'm actually all for it. Like, hey, do what they're
Yeah.
doing because they're doing it right. Get there. I mean,
Yeah.
because I'm horrified.
It's
Like,
hard.
I'll tell you, I don't care if you are 6'14". If you sell, I'm gonna come hunt you down. You got to figure out a succession plan for this, man.
We're
Don't
not.
sell it to
We're not.
private equity, please.
Yeah.
Just
We're
do.
not built. We didn't build it to sell. We build it to solve. We build to solve for it. So that, don't be concerned about that. And then the other thing that Bruce has been saying, he's like, nobody's going to compete. Nobody's going to copy us, because one, this is really hard.
Yeah,
It's Pave the Way,
labor
and our
intensive.
balance bill support is really, really hard,
Yep.
and it's expensive. And they're like, a lot of them, everybody else has sold out to private equity, to your point. So they've taken the money. And now, do you think those businesses are reinvesting? They're not reinvesting to
No,
innovate. No.
they're not
I
going
mean,
to build out, pave the way.
no,
No.
it's too expensive and it's too hard.
Yeah.
We did it out of necessity at the time, but now it's just spinning plates. We don't have to invest anymore. Like, it's built. But the key thing too is we're an LLC, and it's privately held. It's me. I'm the owner, primary owner, right? And in Des Moines, Iowa, where I live, you can live like a king for not that much money. It's our standard of living, our property cost is low around here. I mean, it's just, you don't need that much. So ultimately, what we do at the end of every year is we pay the income tax on the net profit and then reinvest everything back into the business. What
Amen.
are the projects we need to fund to make it bigger, faster, stronger? So we've been doing that for a long time, and don't foresee us, stopping that. And again,
So
the results are there. I mean, we're growing by 20+% every year for the last 5 years. I just don't see that. I don't see that doing anything except ramping up. And as long as you keep your if you keep your executive compensation down to a reasonable level, you can afford to do that and maintain that growth plane without a cratering from a customer service standpoint. But
yeah,
everybody's got to be unselfish.
I was gonna
Everybody
say
has to be unselfish.
I've never
We
seen
can't.
I've never seen Omar this busy for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys are definitely busy
Oh,
right now.
the
What?
pipeline's huge right now.
Yeah, yes, ours is too. Frankly, I mean, we've got a couple new salespeople starting on the same day here in a couple weeks. I mean, it's a really beautiful thing. Um, you said something, and oh gosh, now I lost it. Dang it. Oh no, I want you to talk about this because what people don't understand is um, the legal support for the life of the claim.
Yeah.
The Pave the Way is so labor intensive. We're effectively creating a custom network for every plan that comes in when we don't use a physician only network for sure. Um, we're going to fight that balance bill no matter when it happens, right? It's like there's
Yeah.
no time limit on it.
No.
There's a plethora of in-house attorneys there at ClaimDOC that we work with. They're all fantastic. You've got network negotiators. You've got people that have come from hospitals and are negotiating individual contracts. It's
Yep.
the point I want to get across to people is it is so you're not just reprice. You're not just some dude in a garage repricing claims on a laptop, right? I mean,
Right.
it's like this building full of people that are there, that care, that work hard to make sure your plan goes well. And so you price yourself differently than most of the repricers out there. I mean, some are doing it the
Yeah.
way you do it, but talk a little bit about pricing because I again, when I was newer to this space, I thought, well, that's I don't like that pricing at all. And I've come all the way around to, man, if I'm not paying them that way, I'm worried that I'm not going to have the support, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this: it's been something that we initially, when I looked at the landscape, I was like, okay, I like this about these guys, what they're doing. I like this, what they're doing. You always steal from the smart guys and you steal from your competitors in terms of, this idea or that idea when you're starting out. Anyway, now we were so ingrained in what it is we're doing. We're just developing our stuff, our existing stuff, and then innovating on what's next and not looking to outside for that. But I really liked one of our competitors' payment, the methodology, but I felt it was just egregious. And so I was like, okay, we're going to do it for significantly less than that. But I like the concept because to be co-fiduciary, for the life of the claim, that means you do get into lawsuits on occasion, right? And you don't know when that's going to be, and you don't know what hospital it's going to be with. But the gripe I've always had with the PEPM repricers is, look, it's about a 10% incidence rate on a client-wide basis, right? So if with this client, we don't know it's going to be the first year or the fifth year or the eighth year they get into a lawsuit with a hospital on a large claim, right? If you've been paying per employee per month for repricing, a cheap rate, and then it's in month 6 or year 6 or it's year 12 or year 15, I don't care, and you as a plan sponsor have to pay for that legal defense. That's going to be in federal court or state court, and you're going to be working with a law firm that they don't do this all the time, so you're going to pay them to educate themselves. You will blow all of the potential savings that you would have had from going with us.
Amen.
By going that discounted repricer on a PEPM label if you have one lawsuit in 15 years. Now, the converse end of that is, well, then they'll settle out of court. Or they'll settle before it goes to hospital, right? But what are they settling for your large claim for? They're settling for 15% off the billed charge. So your loss ratio is going to suck. So you either, with those discount providers that we compete with, you're either going to pay now on the literally large claimants, because that's where the hospitals are going to be rattling their saber about there needs to be enough money for them to go after you. So on those really large claimants, you're going to be paying 600, 700, 800% of Medicare. You're not saving that much, but yet you're doing all the rank and file is doing all the work, the RBP work. So the juice is not worth the squeeze, or you get a lawsuit and you just washed away all the potential savings you did from doing RBP in the first place for ones that are in 15 years. Because these lawsuits can take 5 years, 6 years to get completed. I mean, they take a long time and they're very expensive. So the way we do it is by bringing in money from everybody on a flat rate basis, and then we reserve for those fights, right? So we reserve for those fights and then pay for. It's kind of like I always liken it to George Bailey when there's the run on the bank and It's a Wonderful Life, and they're like, I want all my money out of Bailey Building and Loan, and he's like, your money's not here. It's in Joe's house and in Mary's house
It's
and
in Dan's lawsuit.
Huh?
It's
yeah,
in Dan's
exactly.
lawsuit.
So it's like, yeah, exactly. So
It's in
we
Pave
bring in
the
money
Way.
from everybody, and then we pay Joe's lawsuit or April's lawsuit or whatever the thing happened. But that's kind of the mantra, so to speak. But our payment methodology is a flat rate of 10% from auditable claims, right? So it's a flat rate of 10% of auditable claims of the billed charge. Now, what's very important to understand is that probably let's call it 90% of the medical plan claims that are going to come in are provider claims. And we reprice all of those that are under $2,000 that are doctor claims, doctor's office claims. Everything under $2,000 we reprice for free. We will still provide the balance bill support and defense and all of that on those less than $2,000 ones, but that's just a part of our program. It's a price for us to do business. It's table stakes, right? Everything $2,000 and up in billed charges on the provider side, which is called a HIC for a CMS, Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS 1500 claim. Everything 2,000 above gets human eyes on it, gets a nurse and a coder looking at it, auditing that on a line-by-line basis. Then all facility bills, and that's inpatient, outpatient, ambulatory surgical centers, radiology clinics, and dialysis centers. So all facility claims come on a UB, a universal bill. So everything that comes on a universal bill gets audited. So anything that gets audited with nurse and coder and human eyes on it, or using our AI to streamline and all that kind of stuff. We use the AI like crazy, but it's not. We still use humans to oversee things. But all of those are audited claims on a line-by-line basis, and that's why we charge 10% of the bill charge. But then we have caps in it, not to exceed $25,000 for a pre-cert prior authorization claim. Not to exceed $50,000 for ER, ICU, non-pre-certified claim. So that's the delineation there. Also, when we have a direct contract with a facility, so we have a global agreement with a facility, we don't need to reserve any money for any potential lawsuits with that facility. So therefore, we only charge 6% of the billed charge. Okay, same caps, 25 for pre-cert, 50 for ER, ICU. When you boil all of that down, we look at it every year and look at our book of business and where it boils down. For the last 3 years, it has ranged between 6.6 and 6.74% of billed charges.
Wow.
Is what our fees end up being. Now, 80% of the time, the client pays that. So 80% of the time, the client is funding our invoice, paying our claim. About 20% of the time, the stop loss carrier is paying for it, because you have a large claimants. Well, they hit the specific deductible and then go over that. Well, on all of those claims, the stop loss carrier is paying our fees, not the client. And they're happy to do it, because we're taking a $1.4 million billed charge and blocking it down to $300,000. And it would have been an outlier. So if they had that through a network, that 1.4 would have been 1.2. They would get slammed. So they're happy to pay our fee.
Yeah.
Happy.
Yeah.
And because we're co-fiduciary, we do an audit, and our audit corresponds with every week. The TPA sends a weekly check run to the facility, which explains, here's what you're getting paid for. We send the corresponding audits and start the ERISA 180-day statute of limitations. Okay, but we send all the corresponding audits, certified mail, to the facilities. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means in any lawsuit, all of those audits that we report, here's what you got paid and exactly why. Those are Exhibit A. You were informed of what you were paid. You could have appealed. You didn't.
Yeah.
So you didn't follow ERISA process. So long story short, the facilities, especially in California, our balance bill rate's less than 1% in California. And we've been in lawsuits, enough lawsuits that we're really not, they don't mess with us anymore for whatever reason. I think the word is out a bit that you're going to lose against the ClaimDOC folks.
You're going to
lose.
Lose.
They're going to lose.
Yeah.
Because we've already got our position, against an implied contract or a written contract or anything like that. We've already been there, done that enough times. But that process, that workflow process that's baked in is as co-fiduciary, we've got it. Everything is documented, everything is down, everything's done, at the front end. So even in 2 or 3 years, if the plan gets sued or anything, we've got all of that data. Here's the process. Here's everything's time stamped. Everything is, done. Discovery, they see that and they're like, crap.
Yeah.
Let's negotiate.
You literally do not have a competitor in this area. You just don't. I mean,
no, not for that.
And if I'm a lawyer, I'm involved in these. I've been involved in these litigations without you. And it's a very different game. Like I've got to do a lot more work when y'all aren't involved. So you don't. Yeah, one of our newest clients, Ben, that just came on board in the Great Midwest. There, I was just out visiting them last week, and the owner is a fantastically unique individual. I really enjoyed him, but he wanted to sit down and understand where every penny was going. So we sat down and he wanted to know what's the TPA get exactly, and I told him. And he said, "Now what do you get?" And I told him. And he said, "Now what does ClaimDOC get?" And then I said, they're going to get more than what I get. Like they're going to get in this range here, depending on how your claims go. And he goes, "Oh, I'm in the wrong business." And I said, "You don't want to be in that business, man. It's so." I go, "They're going to earn every penny of it." And but I'll tell you what, I'd rather be in that business than the TPA business.
Right.
Because they're having to do a lot of work for very little margin, like we said.
Yeah. It's hard, and it's hard. And every year that their lift gets heavier and heavier. So I'm gonna stay where I'm at and just run in lane 4. Like now we're playing tight end. We're not. Not,
you're doing more than tight end. You're more like offensive line, and it's like the whole offensive line is what I would say.
Yeah.
What you are.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to talk more about like sustainability of RBP, growth of RBP.
Okay.
I've done a ton of research, and what I could come up with, Ben, you correct me if you've seen different, that like 4 years ago it was about 2% of the market, and now it's 3.8 to 4% of the market are doing RBP.
Yep.
With all the transparency, I get asked this question a lot, and I want to hear your answer. With all the transparency coming, with all the AI coming, where do you see RBP going? What do you see happening over the next decade? Stressed you out with that question.
Yeah. Oh, I see it becoming more hybrid, for a few different things. NSA, the No Surprises Act, really, there's so many unintended consequences of legislation,
No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah, exactly. And NSA is no different because now that the hospitals have seen what everybody else is charging, the claims have gone up. The intention was for pricing transparency to bring costs down, right? But again, this is not a consumer product. We don't want to shop for healthcare. We don't.
No.
I don't. Who does? It sounds like it hurts to get cut open and have something operated on. I don't want to go through pain. Screw that. So I want what I want. I want to shop for a new car. I want to shop for a new TV. I want to shop for stuff that's fun and I get enjoyment out of. I don't want to shop for healthcare. And that's pretty much how everybody thinks, I think. But the No Surprises Act, first off, the penalties for non-compliance were so low that the hospitals were like, "Nah, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to publish my prices." And then if they did publish, they didn't advertise where it was. That's another argument that has been argued in court and won on. Because where are you putting it? Are you running billboards? I mean, when Bing came out, there were Bing billboards in every major city all over the country trying to get us to go to use Bing, even though nobody really does, but whatever. They were trying to fight Google and use Bing and billboards everywhere. So where was this advertising? You put your charge master out there. None of them really did it. But when they started kind of adopting it, and in urban areas anyway, now the hospitals were able to see, wait a second, you're getting $36,000 for a gallbladder removal? We're only charging 32, so we're getting 18. We need to pump that up and our ratings are better than those guys. We should be getting more for a gallbladder removal than them. Right? Yeah. That is what's actually happened. The reality is all of the claims went up, right? Oh. Stop loss premium volume has tripled since 2010. Tripled. 100 billion to 330 billion. I mean, come on. So anyway, so some of these legislative things that are supposed to try to help, they actually just exacerbate the problem. But No Surprises Act is one. And the IDRs, okay, so the IDR, God, we have more acronyms than the Army, but IDR, independent dispute resolution.
Yeah.
So, the baseball style arbitrations, you hear that, which doesn't really mean anything to me, but other than I know the process, but I'm just saying, like, why would that be baseball style? Is that how baseball?
I know.
You're like, all right. So because I'm pretty sure the contracts that get negotiated for a new catcher are not like this. You know, you're like, oh, you put out a price and I put out a price, and then this independent dispute resolutions person says that one's right. You know, come on, that's not baseball. That's not how Major League Baseball works. Anyway, okay, so the IDR stuff is what we're seeing is the hospitals are. It's so fractured. It's so wrong the way the IDR language in the NSA is the way that process is built. Is the hospital or you being the person who's the co-fiduciary saying this price that we paid is appropriate and here's the reason why. We can't reference what the bill charge was. So the bill charge is not relevant. Why wouldn't the bill charge be relevant? It is in court when you dispute a claim, and when the hospitals say we want bill charges, we say no, the market rate is between the government, what the government pays and what the commercial payers pay, and here's where we were, right in the middle of that. That's defensible, but it's not in the IDR process. I can't reference the bill charge. And what we find is that a lot of times the hospitals are throwing out a number that's way higher than the bill charge, 6 figures higher, and they're getting awarded because then it makes our payment look like we were really unfair. See what I'm saying? They're like, that's really unfair. So the IDR guy's like, well, over there. So mathematically, they're probably working up some equation where they figured out, okay, if we just go whack job crazy on the bill charge and submit it for IDR, if we get 1 out of 250, we're made whole on all these other ones that we get that get decided on the other side. So the IDR process, everybody needs to call their congressmen and their senators and tell them the IDR process needs to be revamped in the NSA. That needs to be shaped much, much better. I think hopefully we can get there. Hopefully in the next 10 years we'll have that. But right now, 70% of the time, the IDR entity is going to the side of the facility. 70%.
Yeah.
And you're like, it just seems so arbitrary. The issue is too, there's only 14 IDR companies, I think. There's only like 14 or 15 IDR companies in the country, and they're backlogged like 3 million claims, appeals. Yeah, it's insane, right? And they all charge between $600 to $1,000 per case. So that's the businesses somebody needs to get into like yesterday. So knowing attorneys want to do that.
IDR doc,
Yeah.
new side business.
IDRdoc.com. Yeah. So, but that process. So I think that's going to go. I really think that states are going to start to regulate some things because they just started here in Iowa on some PBM legislation that's going to help. I think. Well, it's going to help the rural Iowa pharmacies stay in business, but it's really kind of a whack at PBMs. I can see some other states copying that. I can also see some states starting to regulate hospital reimbursements like Maryland did in the 70s, because Maryland, it's way cheap to go to the hospital. It's way cheaper to go to the hospital than in any other state. It just is, because they have 130% of Medicare is what they can charge. That's been that way since the 70s. They have very low in comparison to other states. They have low health insurance costs. Because the claims are down. The claims are down, so the premium can stay down. I mean, it's math. But Affordable Care Act didn't copy Maryland. They copied Romney Care in Massachusetts, which has one of the highest healthcare costs and health insurance premiums in the country. I mean, come on, guys. I thought it was the best and brightest that go to Washington to serve. It's just stupidity and incompetence and greed that goes to DC to serve. But I don't want to do that.
Okay,
crap.
So back to Craig's theorem, the one commandment of RBP is access. Like, I don't worry about anything.
Yeah.
We're going to solve it.
I didn't finish for the next 10 years. That's
what I'm pushing you back to it. That's because I want to know about access in the next 10 years.
Yeah, access. I think we're going to have more and more hybrid where we have open access to places. We have open access, open claim flow without a contract. And I also think we're going to do a lot more direct contracts as well. So I think it's going to be, finding a home base in the community that we have contracted and then build out around that with places that can be audited. We can audit the bills and do all that stuff. having within that contract, you got to make sure that you have Medicare cap language, like not to exceed 300% of Medicare or what have you, and then also have audit rights. So maintaining that, but I think we're going to see a lot more hybrid. I think we're going to see a lot more of the companies that we compete with copying us in our approach. And hey, but that also means that the adoption rate will go from 4 to 8 to 10. I don't think it's ever going to get to be mainstream. I think we're always going to be kind of a niche kind of thing. Like, we're blues, we're blues and bluegrass. We're never going to take over country music,
Yeah.
But it's always going to be there. I think that's kind of the RBP, but also RBP, it's not going to be RBP the way it was 10 years ago, the way it was 8 years ago, 9 years ago. It's going to be this continue evolve as this hybrid model that saves 25 to 30%. If you save 25 to 30% first year and then hold your claims costs low for the next 5 to 7, why isn't everybody diving into this? That's always shocked me. I'm just like, why aren't we so much bigger than we are based on the value proposition that we offer to the rank and file employee? Like, if you really care about your employees, why are you just raising deductibles? Why are you just raising out-of-pocket maximums? Why are you raising money coming out of their check? You're giving them a 3% raise, but then the exposure they have on their medical plan is 7.
Yeah.
They're getting paid less to do the same job.
Yep.
Essentially. That's not the American dream. That's not going to get the middle class advanced. We're just moving dollars from Main Street to Wall Street. That's all we're doing. Or from Main Street to the 501c3 nonprofit hospital in their urban market that has increased their margins 750% since the Affordable Care Act went into play in March of 2020.
And issued a memo effectively out to all of its offices in 3 states saying, we will basically no longer take anything but a BUCA reimbursement.
Yeah, that's, if it looks like a duck, acts like a duck, walks like a duck, it's a duck. That's a for-profit entity if that's what they're doing. The state AGs should be looking at their 501c3 nonprofit status and revoking some, in my opinion.
Yeah.
If that's the way, that's the position you're going to take, and you're not even going to have a conversation about it, that's a pretty hard line, So if they're not being a member of the community and benefiting their community, that really doesn't speak to that. So, but we'll, again, it's politics and people and, who and all that kind of good stuff. So what's right isn't necessarily going to win out all the time, but that's what should happen, in my opinion. The state AGs should challenge some of those entities' 501c3 status.
What happens over time? And it's not just you. All the repricers are. Well, let's just focus on ClaimDOC though for now. As you're growing, right? You're getting more popular. You're getting clients in new areas. You're submitting claims to new facilities or more claims to facilities you only work with sporadically. How many direct contracts are you growing per year? Like how many like aren't you effectively just like building your own network, a super efficient network, basically?
I'm not. We have a lot of our competitors are, but our desire is not to become a crappy PPO. I mean, we don't want that. We want access without a contract if we can get it, because then you can audit the bills for.
When I say building a contract, though, that's what I mean. I mean like, because you're developing a relationship with X system in Montana, right, where they're accepting you. So basically, in my mind, you basically kind of have a de facto contract with them.
Yeah, those are that's ultimately what we would like. And we're cutting on average two single case agreements a day. Wow. And I think that'll just increase as we go. And so we'll hire more provider relations team and teach them how to, negotiate and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that'll become more prevalent as far as
can you explain that one?
Acceptance.
Can you explain that one for us? Like when and why are you required to do a single case agreement?
Okay, so generally in all pre-cert prior authorization type situations, about 15% of those, right? So out of every 100, there'll be 15 where the ambulatory surgical center or the hospital or outpatient facility once paid more. Now, if we can't get that redirected to an ambulatory surgical center, and let me talk about this, Pave the Way, just this piece real quick. I'm going to sidebar this and then bring me back to that because it's relevant to cost savings. So Medicare for that shoulder surgery we talked about earlier, Craig, is $1 at inpatient. At the inpatient hospital, Medicare would reimburse that hospital $1. Okay. At this ambulatory surgical center, same code, same procedures, same everything. The Medicare reimbursement rate, 35 cents. Why wouldn't I want, as an employer-sponsored benefit plan, why wouldn't I want to pay 25% above 35 cents, which I don't even know what that is because I'm stupid, but instead of, I should have done like 40 cents, but anyway, but I don't want to pay $1.25 if I can pay
42 cents.
42 cents. Okay, perfect. So that's what we do in the Pave the Way program is we're like, oh, so you want to get paid more, hospital? Okay. Who's the doctor? Who's your doctor? They'll talk to the member, they'll talk to the doctor, and they'll find out where the doctor has surgical rights. And we're like, okay, we can read them up over. What day do they do all their surgeries at this ambulatory surgical center? Thursday. They like to do all their surgeries at one spot. Doctors don't want to jump in car and scrubs and go to another place, put on new scrubs. So they want to do it. So we will redirect and reschedule that to the ambulatory surgical center. So then you pay 42 cents as opposed to $1.25. That doesn't show up on a discount report.
No, but I want
that's my point.
To circle back. Is it that much?
Discount.
Is it that much? Like I was going to guess it was like 70 cents. It's not, but it's like 70% off.
Oh, it's huge. She made huge, massively difference. And generally speaking, ambulatory surgical centers have a lot better outcomes. Less MERS, less sepsis, less stuff that ends up, in the ICU, okay? Yeah. So I'm like, we go over here as much as you can. But again, when you look at your cost savings report, you're going to see bill charge and what the reimbursement was. You're not going to see what the spend could have been. And there's no way to show you that in a report with pie graphs and crap. So I'm always focused on cost per covered employee per year, cost per covered employee per year, what's your cost? What are you spending per year per employee in your health plan versus where you were, where it was just a free for all disc, Kohl's disc 85% off the jeans, but you still pay the $80 for the jean, all the nasty, just ridiculous stuff at the PPO, the bullcrap discount off a completely made up number, right? Of the charge master, the master list price. Okay, now we were talking about something, but that was relevant to that, but I forgot.
Access.
You're supposed to bring me back. I've got ADHD. You got
I've noticed. So I was getting at access, and aren't you effectively just sort of building?
Right. Okay.
Relationships. No. Let's not call it a network. Let's call it relationships.
Relationships. Yes.
Getting easier over time, effectively.
Yes. Because, and we're doing that customarily or custom as build out for each group that goes to a new area. But once we have those inroads laid, then it's just feed it, but because we have our logo on the ID card, because we engage with the facilities and want to have conversations and not sneak around and all that garbage, because we're doing that and have done that since day one, those relationships are there and we can get things done very, very quickly, and members don't even know about it. It's all good. But that number is a bit higher than our normal rate, right? Our normal rate of 125 of Medicare or 120% of the cost of charge ratio. It is, but 9 times out of 10, it's well below the BUCA's reimbursement. So it's better if we don't have a contract, because sometimes the BUCA contracts and others have favored nations clauses in them. So they can't give you a better discount than what they give that particular entity, right? So if we don't have a contract, but we've got a relationship, I'm in at 212, and they're not violating their favored nations clause with their PPO contract with the BUCAs. Savings for the members, savings for the plan. Achieved.
That's where we started too. That's right. That was because my question was how and why on single case agreements. And the short answer I'm going to just give would be usually it's going to be a surgery, and it's a bigger ticket item where in the pre-certification process, the facility says, wait a minute, we're going to need more than 125% of Medicare. And so then now we're negotiating anywhere from that up to 225% of Medicare.
Ish.
Or more if we have.
Yeah. And then all those things, all those factors come into play. I know, there's certain teaching hospitals that their charge masters aren't ridiculous. So there's a lot of hospitals that their charge master list price for all the goods and services that they offer are bananas high, right? But like Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, Mayo, right, is a teaching hospital. Their charge master is really low. It's a very, very low in comparison to hospitals in Chicago, for example. So it's like you don't get much of a discount at Rochester, at Mayo in Rochester, but the starting number is so much lower. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that. And those are they're not getting, they're not getting the layup, the easy layup. They're getting the double pump reverse, 360 dunk shot case, so you want to spend the money there and make sure that they're you know what I mean? Like you don't go to Cleveland Clinic for oil changes and tire rotation, right? Go to a regular hot place for that. But if you need Cleveland Clinic, go to Cleveland Clinic, and the plan can support that. It's just you just have to be smart all the time. It's a giant game of whack-a-mole.
What you and I have an industry buddy, an insider who is frustrated with RBP, I'll say, because I think it's because of where he is. But anyway, he has recently been interviewed and done some consulting with private equity firms that are purchasing hospital systems, and their primary goal is to better identify low-paying plans and weed those people out of the process, like to become more efficient using AI to weed out whether it's RBP or anything, any kind of lower paying plan. And he's horrified, being somebody who sees the writing on the wall in that world, so to speak. He's horrified that that's going to make RBP that much harder and that we're just going to run into more and more access issues over time. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, remember, if you go through the ER and the ICU, you always get admitted.
You're fine.
But you're fine. So pre-cert stuff and pre-certified, and if they engage in conversation, then we're still going to be okay, even if they identify us more than 15% of the time. Our model, I don't think it's going to hurt. There's going to be some models that are destroyed by that if it's adopted nationally. If HCA does it and Tenet does it and some other hospital organizations do it, and it just goes across the country, our model is really not going to be affected that much. Others are going to be destroyed. So I kind of welcome that, because there can be only one. I want it all, Craig. I want it all. I want all 6%. If there's only 6% RBP plans, I want all 6. Okay. So I'm not one of these people who wants a congenial competition with my no. I take the Ray Kroc approach of competition. And Ray Kroc, to quote him, he said, if one of my competitors was drowning and their head was above water, I'd shove a garden hose in his mouth.
I love that.
I'm sorry. I'm cut from Ray Kroc's cloth more so than others. There's not a kinder, gentler nation in that regard.
My response to this concern was more of, I think RBP is going to keep growing. I think it's going to keep getting harder, but it's going to keep growing because we're going to have more slice options, more hybrids. But you got to remember, all that transparency and AI that the big nasty firms are using to try and weed out low payers, we're using to get pricing and access as well. So it's some level, as long as you have more than 3 systems in a region, you're going to have one of those systems that says, man, I'll do it for 170% of Medicare all day long, right? And maybe we have to go to 170% of Medicare.
And Medicare, like Memphis has 2 main ones, the Methodist and Baptist system, and you can always play one off of the other. For example, it's like, all right, they're going to take this. You want, what do you want? Oh, okay, you want the business? Oh, okay. But it gets more difficult in rural areas, where there's only one hospital in the county. That becomes a bit more of a sticky wicket. But urban areas, there's still plenty of competition that you can redirect and then hospital-owned facilities as well, or physician-owned facilities as well. Those guys, man, they've just, I mean, you've seen that and you've used that that optic or that graph that shows since 1980 the physician payments have gone up at 2 to 3% per year, and then the hospital administration has gone up like that, and payment, claims have gone up like that. And so, you've seen that graph. And so the physician-owned facilities, when they get together and they invest in an ambulatory surgical center, we're like, yes, let's work together, and it's great for the clients that are in that market. I don't know. There's going to always be a way to duck around stuff. You just have to stay creative and aggressive, and I've always felt like in insurance, you're only, because it's not a, I don't have a foundry, I'm not melting steel to make rails for the railroads. That is a big investment up front to get all of that stuff. We're dealing with ink on paper, and so we're only limited by our own creativity and work ethic, because we can come up with different ideas and then call these guys and call those guys and work together and make partnerships. And there's always a way to get around that in a what's the word I'm looking for? Not a tangible, an intangible product.
Yeah. Yeah. Where you been fishing?
Sailorville Lake, our reservoir right here, right by my house.
Is that where you caught all those trout?
No, that was Table Rock Lake down in the Ozarks.
That was down in the Ozarks.
Yeah. Down there. But I've been ripping lips catfish for the last month and a half, so it's been great. So I'm not think about Sailorville Lake, which is just north of Des Moines. It's brown water, so it's river fed, mud bottom river fed, so it's dark water, so it's catfish. And then we have striped bass, but you still got to use something that smells, some stink bait, unless you're top water using your Rapala, but that hasn't quite started yet. The top water's been not that great because it's been cold until this week. It's been really cold from a spring standpoint. So I've been bottom fishing, just bouncing crawlers off the bottom, and it's been working lately. Just about a half a worm on a Texas rigging, just dragging. It's like, I liken it to a piece of popcorn on the carpet. And you're walking through your house at midnight, going back to bed, and you see a piece of popcorn on the carpet. You're gonna grab it. Now there's those Cro-Magnons like myself who will eat it, but other people might pick it up and then throw it away. But that's really what it is. Just taking like half a worm and putting it through the head and just dig it up about a foot off the deck, put a weight on, and just dragging it along behind you at about 4 miles an hour. Oh, they're hitting those suckers. They're hitting them. So that's been hot lately. How about you?
This is my Lake Oroville office, I joke, behind me here. And Lake Oroville has been but that's where I took you last year when you were out here.
Yeah.
It's been unbelievable.
That was hot that day.
We had a great day. We caught 30 some odd fish. We had big ones. I've been fishing that lake since 2004. And it's always been a good lake. We've just had this crazy new lake effect thing going on where that lake got super, super low 3 years in a row, but it's filled each one of those years. So you're getting like 200 plus feet of bank that's getting this new lake effect where you have, it's been
vegetation,
it's growing bushes, it's growing trees, it's got nutrients coming in, and then the water comes in. So 3 years in a row of that, we've had, I've only been out fishing like 6 days this year. Half of those days me and one buddy have caught more than 100 fish. It's just, it's been crazy. Like I come home with my thumbs bleeding and my wife is like bandaging me up. For those that are watching that aren't fishermen.
My best day this year is 4 and 3 hours. Best day, like 100.
It's been off the charts. It's been off the charts.
Oh my God.
You're going to have to fly out here. I'm telling you, I've never seen it like this. Now, my last trip out there, I took our buddy Darren Pitts, who's
Yeah.
a recreational fisherman, and we only caught 20 something fish, but we got on the water late. It was super hot. We got off early. It wasn't a full day. Um,
Yeah. That's
and
still action.
we're now into the summer pattern, whereas when we were really catching them was in the spawn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but it's the bass, spotted bass, largemouth bass, they are thriving on that lake. That's the other thing. On that lake, a 5 fish limit usually was almost always spotted bass. You would need like, like 9 pounds to get a check, and like 12 pounds might win the tournament for 5 fish.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, we're going out there just recreational fishing and catching 15 to 16 pounds for our limit. It's not known as
No
a
way.
fish lake, but the lake is so much healthier. It's crazy how
It's
much these lakes
exploded.
cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It's been wild.
200 feet of vegetation has that large of an effect to double the size, or of wow. That's awesome. Yeah, I do need to get out for that.
Yeah, honestly,
Even 20.
I'm
20
locked into
is
that lake
after-
now too.
Yeah.
My boat, we have all these restrictions out here I've told you about, but there's a new
Yeah.
thing called the golden mussel. You're all restricted, so you get locked into a lake effectively, and they put a zip tie on your boat, and as long as you
Yeah.
go with that zip tie, you could go back in, but I can't. So that's the only lake I'm going to fish for the next few months.
Yeah, because but have they started to take effect though? The mussels?
No, we haven't seen. I'm not aware of any of them. The mussels are in the river. They're in the Delta and the Sacramento River system, San Joaquin River.
Okay.
But we're not
All
aware
right.
of having it got into any of our reservoirs yet, and that's what they're
Okay.
trying to keep them out of the reservoirs.
Well, kind of. I mean, I don't know. I fished Lake Minnetonka in suburban Minneapolis, and they've had those zebra things.
The zebras and the quaggas are not as bad, from what I hear.
It's so clear. It's so clear. So you're just bumping a Senko, and you see 4 or 5 different species start coming for it, and then a big northern chases them all away and goes bam and hits it, and you see it. It's like you're watching a nature show, fishing show. You're watching it. You're like, oh my Lord, that's what it does. That's what sometimes they'll come up and they'll turn, they're, oh, what, that's weird. And they'll turn and take off. But the whole action of it is so great. And it's only because they have those there. So the water is so freaking clear. It's insane. So it's a beautiful.
The zebras and the quaggas are out here too.
And the bass got cute. The bass got huge in that lake.
It helped bass fishing in the Great Lakes, in Havasu, in Meade, in Mojave. The zebras and the quaggas have not hurt bass fishing. The stated position right now of our governmental agencies is that these golden mussels will, and that is supported by some of the evidence of what happened when they went into went into Africa and South America, and they decimated lakes within 2 years. So,
ouch.
It looks to be nasty. One of the bigger issues is there's so much more variable. Like, so they can live in a 200-foot span or something like that, whereas the quaggas and the zebras are really limited in a much narrower band of water. We'll see what happens. But yeah, apparently they really do feed out a lake. But
really,
so California and the federal government out here, they're like bending over backwards to keep them out of the reservoirs, and so far they have. I mean, they've found some boats coming in with them on the prop or whatnot and kicked them out, but as far as we know, we don't have them in the reservoirs yet. And man, I like, just because of the way our water's been out here with the reservoirs getting low and then filling up 3 years in a row, Folsom's really good. Oroville's really good. Shasta's really good. Like I mean, our lakes are just really healthy right now. It's too bad that there's no easy way to like fish Folsom today and Oroville tomorrow, because the stupid tax they're using is not universal yet. So you get locked into one lake, and like, if you want to change lakes, you're looking at a potential 30-day quarantine. It's excessive. And that's not everywhere. Some places they're pressure washing your boat and you could go in right now.
Oh, nice.
Some places it's free. Some places it's $120. I mean, it's all over the map. There's not much rhyme or reason yet to it.
Well, you do live in the Wild West. So it sounds like it's the Wild West right now.
Cal Unicornia, as I like to call it. Ben, man, we've done it. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it. Anytime.
Yeah. We'll get this chopped up and put out, and it'll probably be public in a day or two.
All right, cool.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll
Have a
kill.
good weekend.
Let me stop the recording here.